All right, there we go. Good morning. So we wanted to welcome everyone to this morning's webinar, using multimedia to support parents' conversations with children, creating and using social stories. We'd love to get started with some introductions. If people want to get the chat going this morning, we'd love for you to introduce yourself. You can share your name, your role, where you're joining from. Maybe how you're feeling on this snowy morning. My name is Adrienne Girard. I'm the director of the training and technical assistance team for First Steps Together at Jewish Family and Children's Services. And I wanted to do some quick housekeeping, talk a little bit about First Steps Together and our resources, and then hand it over to our presenters. This meeting is being recorded and we'll share it out after, also with all of the resources that we're sharing during this webinar. And for those of you who are not familiar with First Steps Together is a home visiting program dedicated to serving and empowering families on their parenting and recovery journey. We have 7 sites across Massachusetts that serve parents and expectant parents who have been affected by substance use. We offer voluntary free services in the home, community, virtually, delivered by peer support specialists who's a parent in recovery or a mental health counselor with specialized training. And we offer groups, care coordination. We know that pregnancy and parenting young children can be a hopeful and exciting time, but can also be stressful and overwhelming. This can be especially true when working on recovery. So our services are driven by what families feel will be most helpful to support their recovery and parenting journeys. First Steps Together is open to any person 18 years of age or older who has used opioids, stimulants, alcohol, marijuana, or other substances in the past or present, and who is pregnant or expecting a child or has at least one child 5 years or younger. We're showing our map here, which has our 7 First Steps Together sites, as well as a contact person for each site. And on the bottom of the page is a link to our website on mass.gov. As well as my contact information. So please reach out if you have any questions. And we wanted to let you know about some of the things that our training and technical assistant team does. We're really fortunate at First Steps Together to have a dedicated technical and training team. But we really want to work on building connections and capacity to anybody who's doing similar work. And we have a lot of resources that we'd love to share. We have recorded webinars that we can give people access to, as well as live webinars on the 4th Tuesday of the month. And we're glad that you joined us this morning. We have a library of topic-based newsletters, and we're really excited that we created a guide about doing this work with input from staff across the project, and it'll be printed this spring. If you're interested about any of these resources, watching the webinars, or learning more about the project or reading a copy of the guide, please reach out either in the chat or you can email me. And I'm really excited about the 3 presenters for this morning's webinar. Tamar Azuri, she has her master's in psychology and she worked as 10 years as a child clinical psychologist in Israel and community mental health centers. In a center for intensive care for toddlers on the autism spectrum and in private practice. She currently works as a parent-child clinician at the Center for Early Relationship Support at Jewish Family and Children's Services, working with families that are impacted by substance use disorder, trauma, postpartum mental state, and fragile babies. Maytal Sandbank is a program specialist on the training and technical assistance team for First Steps Together, and she's currently pursuing her Master's of Social Work from Boston University. Prior to this, Maytal was working as an educator and supervisor overseeing the infant program for Horizons for Homeless Children. And Maytal is trained in Touchpoints, Circle of Security, and Child Homelessness Studies. She's given lots of trainings, including trainings on trauma-informed care in infants. And Erica Napolitan is a family recovery training and technical assistance specialist. She began her work 13 years ago as a family support specialist and MOUD advocate with the Fresh Start program after successfully completing the program herself as a client. Through her work with Fresh Start and later Project Nest, she began speaking publicly, training providers and medical professionals from across the country on substance use exposed newborns, the benefits of peer support, coaching, using parenting as a catalyst to recovery, and the importance of trauma-informed practices for individuals and families with substance use disorder. So I'd love to welcome everybody, and especially Tamar, Maytal, and Erica, and I will hand it over to Erica.
Thank you, Adrienne. So we're really excited to be here today, and we're just going to give you a little overview of what we're doing. So we're going to review just a quick little review of part 1 of the webinar series. We're going to walk through social stories and what is a social story, how to use them, and steps to building them. We're going to view some samples created on different platforms. We're going to show you how to create a social story with your participants and how to use social stories with the families that you work with. Just a little recap from last month, we went over multimedia to support conversations with children. In the last webinar, we discussed using books and multimedia, such as videos, to help us talk to children about hard topics. We went through some of these great books that are here on the screen. We looked at Sesame Street and Communities as a great resource to talk to children about some challenging topics. And we're talking about social stories today, which is a type of multimedia that is more personal and custom made version of it. And now I am going to turn it over to, and I should add, if you would like the link to the recording, I think we're going to share that out and might possibly be able to put it in the chat for you. So now I am going to turn it over to Tamar, and she's going to talk to us about social stories.
Muting myself. Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is ready and warm enough in this snowy morning. I see some with their coffee, some with the fireplace. So I hope not so many kids, like for everyone. But presenting the social story, as Erica said, that is kind of a story, but something that will be a little bit more particular for the child. I will start with my personal story about social story. Because when I was a young mom, not so young anymore, as you can see, I used to make those small books to my daughter to prepare her before I left her for the first time. Doing this book was a combination between my need to invest my mommy guilt of leaving her into something useful, and also to make something that I believe will help her to symbolize me and our relationship when I will be gone. So I made a small notebook with our pictures described in a very simple language what's going to happen. We read it together before I left. She read it with her grandparents while I was gone, and then it stayed sitting on the shelf long after I came back. It became a tool in our family, and I made some more for the other children. One example like is here. And we made them before I need to leave as a parent, before time that were full of changes and transitions, before a baby brother was born. And even their aunts and uncles took it as a tool and made those little notebooks for their children to the same purpose. So this is one of the first one I made. We can go over it, just see like the example, the story. Mommy and Daddy were gonna go. We can move. They will see beautiful street, special bus, Ferris wheel, the big band. So this was the story in my family. And then as part of my psychology internship, I worked in an educational therapeutic center with preschoolers on the autistic spectrum. I was part of a multidisciplinary team that I learned so much from. And I was surprised to learn that there is a professional name to this family notebook we use to make in our family. It's called a social story, and speech therapists used to make them for the kids, especially to help them with transition, adjusting for a change for children on the autistic spectrum. They used to make them before separation, and to connect between an experience to the right vocabulary. As a therapist in this center, I learned how to use them as a more advanced way to process an emotional experience. When I moved to the US and my little one started to go to a daycare, like to school here in America, I see that her teacher used to make lots of social stories for her many times before she was potty training, before she was going to a different class, and she used to take them home with her and loved the time that we can sit together on the sofa and read them. So I wonder, before moving forward, are people familiar with them, know what I'm talking about, or never heard about those? You can like unmute yourself and share, or just share in the chat. Okay, I think I will move forward, and feel free if any moment you want to share more or say more. Can you hear me? You can hear me? Okay. So now in my work as a parent-child clinician at First Steps Together, I sometimes use them with my clients. Like, for example, the last time I used it was working with a mom and a 2-year-old that's been through a lot of traumatic events in their life, and a mom that had challenging, it was challenging for her to speak with her daughter about those kind of situations. And before I left for a long absence, I thought, before my vacation, I thought it's a good opportunity to make those kind of social stories to show her, to give an opportunity of how we can speak about those kind of stuff, like about hard situations. So Erica, can you go one slide back, please? No. Okay, yeah, another one. Okay, so like this is an example. Of course, it's not real pictures. So I am Audrey, I am 3 years old. Every Wednesday I meet Tamar, together we play with the baby and other toys. Next week, Tamar is not gonna come. She will keep my baby safe. I might miss Tamar and the baby, but I will have my mommy to keep me safe and give me a hug whenever I'm sad. So before we moving forward, I want to say it's part. So for me, it's part of my work. It's another tool that I'm using, sometimes to build even a narrative of a trauma, or before termination, or before a kid is going to a new school, or expected separation. And I think Meital and Erica will share later on some more examples that are more particular to our participants. So I think you got a sense of a little bit what I'm speaking about, but let's start to speak what is a social story. So first I want to say that I'm sure there are hundreds of different ways to make those. And like in this situation, all creativity is really welcome. But now I'm gonna give some definition to our purpose that we can go with her, but I'm sure there are different ones in different professions even. So for us, it will be a short and simple story with pictures used to describe a social situation to a child and help them learn ways of coping in the situation. Social story usually needs to be written in an age and developmentally appropriate way. The child will be the main character or the hero. And as I said, like, remember that this tool can have different definition and different purposes from some other profession, but we're giving this definition just for today to communicate and think about this tool for our purposes. So typically, social story will be constructed that the child will be the main character or the hero. The beginning will describe some of the backgrounds or give some context that lead into a change or a challenge or the new experience, then followed by emotional impact of it, then followed by how the child is able to cope with it, to respond and overcome or adapt the change or the challenge. And usually we'll try to end it in a good and optimistic way. And now I want to think together with you why social story, it's a good thing, and it's a really good tool for me to work for this kind of situation. And I think very similar to what we spoke last webinar about how advantages of a book can help working with kids. So this will be very similar, just a little bit more specific for this child. So first, a social story will be a preparation for a change. This could be a new experience, like first time going to the dentist, an expected change, like moving up a class in school, or unexpected or potentially harder emotional challenge, like, I don't know, family illness or separation from a parent. Social story can provide an explanation to children and give them some sense of control, helping children better to anticipate, to understand, and adjust to a new difficult situation. So first, it will be the preparation for a change. If I'm thinking about a second advantage, it will give them an emotional vocabulary that's connected to the experience. Part of our work with kids as a parent and as a provider is to make the connection between the experience, like I feel fire in my body, I can hit someone, and the name of the emotion, like means I feel angry. When we help kids identify the feeling word that can name or explain their emotion, we are giving them an option to communicate their feeling, which also can help them to regulate themselves. I think, even think about us, not about kids. Many of us know the feeling of being very overwhelmed or confused. And then after a good talk with their therapist or a spouse or a friend, when you can describe with words what's going on in your mind, we often feel much better and more regulated and contained. So giving them the emotional vocabulary usually can help to regulate and to communicate. Reading about this kind of challenge in a book, it's a safe distance to speak about this challenge. Social story can give us a way with to do some emotional processing from this distance. We externalize the problem, we think the problem, we can think about the experiences, but it's happening in the book. It's not happening to me right now at the moment. So just as the last webinar, we discussed other books, like I'm Missing My Daddy, we can talk about something difficult without feeling too close or too vulnerable or too painful at the moment. I think in some situation or for some kids, we can even make it feel even more further away. Maybe the child isn't ready to face the problem with people, so we can always do it for kids, like to write it about an animal or a cartoon or their favorite stuffy, to represent the same theme and underlying feeling, but less close to their own experience. So it's also another, there's another version that you can play with it. I think shared reading time, like reading a book together on the sofa or I don't know, in a cozy, like between a parent and a child, is usually a pleasurable time that holds some closeness of emotional bonding. So reading this book together can also work in this way. It's reading a social story together can be just a starting point for a longer ongoing conversation about emotions. Like, for example, thinking of other times that the child was feeling nervous or sad, and what did you do when you were feeling sad? I don't know, last week when you didn't get your popsicles that you wanted. This can lead to thinking through the things that help overcome and adapt the last challenge, reminding the child's strengths. I think for kids, if the book is out there, sometimes they will just go, play around and go to their bookshelf and grab it. And sometimes it's a cue to like a convert that this is what they want to discuss right now. And we spoke about a lot of how it's really helpful for the kids, but I believe it also have this advantage for the grown-up as well. Just by, I think we can go another slide. Yeah, thank you, Erica. So even making the book is a chance to think about the child, the change, the challenge, and to think with guidance or by themselves about the appropriate developmental language to speak with the child about it. And with that being done, to come more ready and regulate, as we said, like preparation is always help us to regulate, to discussing the topic with their children in real time. I think as Erica shared last webinar about when she came ready to this conversation with her daughter to speak about hard topics, when we coming as a parent more ready, we'll be more regulated. And just even, I know that making the book is an opportunity for the parents to feel they're doing something active to help their child to cope. And sometimes this can give us like more sense of control and helping the kids. And so I hope I convinced you why I think it's like a very useful tool to use. And now we want to think how to make those social stories in a very simple steps. Like we're going now to a very basic guideline. I will do it for younger kids, but it's really an arena of creativity. It will depend on the child age, on the parents' creativity and talented, the content. So you can really see it is a very basic guidelines and improvise and elaborate as much as you want. I just thought it can be helpful to start with some basic, and then like you can really go wild with it. So maybe before we will build a social story, we have few examples for you, but I wonder if you, and when we're speaking about right now, if you can share about situations that can be beneficial to use social story. Again, you're welcome to unmute yourself or share in the chat about situations that you will feel that can be useful to use in your own family or with our clients.
Maybe reunifying with a parent that they've had a separation with.
Yeah, I think we'll have some examples for one like this later on. Thank you, Ashley.
Tamara, I don't know if this is your experience. I feel like there's a lot in the medical world for like sort of medical traumas or surgeries, and just thinking about our kiddos who may need medical procedures.
Yeah,
Seems like a really good one.
I agree.
I think also transitioning home, if the children were in foster homes prior and are coming back home to the parents.
Yeah. Transitions, general. Okay, so I think I'm going to move forward, but if you have more ideas, it will be great. I think I will give some, and Erica and Meital will share later on some more examples that will be, even like Ashley said, a little bit more specific to our participants. So when I'm thinking of how to build it, first I will start by to choose one topic, to find the content that I want to address, like to crystallize it. I think many times there is a lot going on. I don't know, we need, as Ashley said, like we're moving back to the parents and the parent, I don't know, like I'm thinking we're moving to a new house and we're gonna start a new school and you're not gonna see daddy anymore. I don't know, sometimes there's a lot going on, but we need to find like this simple topic that we want to address. The new house is the main one. This is what we're gonna think about it, that it's kids and things that will be really complicated. For these purposes, we'll make it simple about one topic, not mix it with other things that's going on. Or like the example that Amy gave about going to a surgery and what we'll need to do after it. If now the topic is the surgery, we're gonna do it the surgery. Maybe later on we can write another one about my recovery after surgery. So we thought for this example today, we'll build a story about a very common challenge for every child, a little bit more natural, about the kids that are going to a new school. So we'll see, this will be our example for this one. The frame of the book will be a page with a picture and between 1 and 2 sentences in each page. Page range can be changed, of course, depend on the child age and some other factors as well. For a 2-year-old, I will do something around 5 pages book. For a 5-year-old, it can be even 11, but of course, always depend on the child, on their focus span, on their verbal development. So you can always, if you want to check, you can check their favorite books at the time when you're doing it and do your own ones a little bit more shorter. But don't do it too long. About the picture, I think we will show this webinar some different examples, but it can be a real picture of the child life. Now we all have so many of them on our phones, so it will be a good use of this. Really not more than 1 or 2 per page, that won't be too much. It can be a drawing, it can be a clip art downloading from the net, any other creative idea or talent you can think of. Another thing, of course, usually we can do them on the computer or on the phone, and Meital will show us later like a really easy way to do it. But I really recommend to print this book. That child will have a hard copy. Sometimes, like these days, we're forgetting the advantage of the real thing outside of the screen. But I'm here to remind you that for this purpose, I think a concrete book can give an extra meaning. And of course, maybe it's not available for everyone, but I think many of the offices, we can also offer to our participants to do this for them. But remember that it will be, I think, better to have hard copy. So let's start by the cover and the first page. Okay, so the first page will be the name of the story, like the cover. Usually I will try that the name of the story will have the child name, Sam's story, or Sam is going to a new school. The first page right here, Sam is going to a new school. Will be our example for today. The first page will start from the main character, the hero, presenting the kids. Erica, can we move one forward, please? Thank you. So it will introduce the boy, the hero. I am Sam. I'm 4 years old. I live in Waltham with my family. And then for an older child, we can elaborate it for another page or two, like this example. Every day I'm playing with my mom. We are going to the library to shop and spend the whole day together. So I think for younger kids, one page for the introduction will be enough. For an older one, we can expand it a little bit more. The second part will be a page that will give a description of what's going to happen without the emotion. Like next week, I'm going to a new school. In a few weeks, I will have a younger brother. My mom will go for 2 weeks. And here you can elaborate or simplify it really depending on the child and the experience. Like in this example that we wrote, next week, I'm going to a new school, start school. I will meet my new teacher and new toys and many new friends. So after we introduce the challenge or the feeling, the third part will be a description of the emotional experience. Before we're doing it, I really want to emphasize that when we're presenting the emotional experience, to use some doubts words. We're not like to say, I might miss my mommy. Maybe I will feel sad. Sometimes I will. I think for those of us who are familiar with MIO, this is a very MIO word. We're not a mind reader. So when we're giving this option, use some doubts words for the kids. Like we're not a prophet. We don't know what's going to happen, how we're going to feel. So after giving some words for this emotional experience, the fourth part will be a coping mechanism. What I can do when I feel sad or angry. When I feel sad, I can hug my daddy. When I miss my mommy, I can draw something to her. When I will always remember that my mommy will come back to pick me up. Like this example, when I am sad or confused, I can also go to my teacher. She can help me, hug me, or play with me. And I can also take my daddy to hold him. And this is an opportunity that will be, we said it's a very custom made. So this will be an opportunity to think about the specific child and how he's coping, what helped him in the past, what are the coping mechanisms that are available to him in this situation. And of course, we can, as a conversation starter, we can encourage him to think about some other things that will help him. Because we're speaking about a children's book, we'll try to end it in a positive tone. I know that life will not always be like this, but when we're writing this kind of a book, I will try to end it like in this example, and I will remember that every day after lunch, mommy will come to pick me up, and I can tell her about all the fun things I did in school today. Or after 2 days, mommy will come back and I can give her a big, big hug. Or after surgery, as Amy said, like I will be stronger and healthier. So to try to keep it as in a positive tone for the end. Before I summarize what I present, any questions, things that people want to add or ask? Okay. So I think, as we said, the social story is a tool we can make for parents and as parents or with them to help the child prepare for a challenge or a change or process an experience that happened in the past. It's a tool that can help the child to adjust to a change or challenge, to facilitate their sense of control and understanding, and give them emotional vocabulary to an experience that helps them to communicate with us and to regulate in real time. The finished product can provide enjoyable parent-child time, can act as a conversation starter, and help the caregiver to be more prepared speaking about challenging topics. As I told you, I believe in those stuff to end in a positive tone, so I will end my part in a positive tone. This is an example that I have for a 3-year-old boy that his mom made him a very cute little story when they separated for the first time. The one in the left is the one that the mom gave him. It's a Hebrew letter, so you can see it's looking a little bit weird, but his mom is very talented, so she drew him like a coloring book that he can color. And 2 years later, when he was 5 years old and he had a new baby sister, when the mom needs to leave her for a few days, he volunteered to make the book for his baby sister, as you can see the right example. So he made him. And although it's really hard to follow his narrative, I think it's amazing to see how he remembered it as a tool that helped him to cope. And for me, it's the best proof that this thing has a meaning. So the one from the right, the one from the left is the one that his mom made it for him, and the one from the right is the one that he did for his sister. And I think I will pass it to Erica and Meital that thought about really good examples and do it with our participants.
Thank you, Tamar, so much. And I absolutely love this ending this on a positive note. I mean, it's just so powerful to show that this tool was so helpful for your nephew that he, felt the need to make one for his sister. And I just absolutely love that. That's how important and impactful they can be for children. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about how we can use social stories to support the families we work with. And before we do that, I would like to just, put it out there. What are some things that people feel are the most challenging for the parents that you work with to talk to their kids about? And you can unmute or you can open the chat. I know we covered a couple of them and we're going to cover a couple more, but if there's anything in particular that you can think of that may be a challenge for parents.
I think a lot of our families struggle just with, the fact of not having their child and having them be with DCF. So I could see how using this and creating a story, for the child and the parent together, on their visits and how hard it is to leave the visits with their child and without their child, and vice versa for the child having to leave the mom. So I could see how this could be super helpful, with looking ahead and preparing them for the next visit, and think about the good things instead of the difficult things.
Absolutely, Julie, and I love that you're bringing up those things. So we're gonna talk about some specific examples of how to support children through separation, because that's what I see coming through in the chat, that it's really being separated from your child, or if another parent is in prison or is in jail, having to end those visits is really challenging, right? A time that you are away from your mom or your dad. So, we're going to go through a couple of those examples, but we want to really think about how do we do this with parents? As Tamar mentioned, some families may have multiple things going on at one time. There's lots of different situations happening. So we really want to, talk to parents about what feels the most important right now, what feels like a priority. We can ask questions like, is there a situation that you or your child is really nervous or worried about right now? Because as Tamar mentioned, this isn't just a tool for children. This is often a tool that parents can use to help process the situation too. Being separated from your child is hard. Using these tools and helping your child process can help you process as well. So we can really explore with parents and ask some open-ended questions about, how are you feeling about this situation? Are you nervous about your child going to daycare? Are you worried about how your son is going to feel when you go into treatment for the next 2 weeks? Just really exploring with parents how they're feeling and wondering how their child might be feeling and how can we help them create these stories to help process these feelings with their families. So just some different ideas that we have to share that could potentially be something that our families would be walking through is, having a new baby. We can use social stories for preparing for our time in the hospital, or for when baby comes home. What's that experience going to be like to be a big sibling? The blending of families. Many times, families come together in different types of situations. That could be a new partner or spouse that's moving in with family members, gaining new siblings or roommates, and we can talk through what that'll look like for children. We mentioned moving to a new home earlier, but moving to a new home or a shelter, talking through what that's going to look like and using a social story to help children process. Starting a new school or a daycare, or having a new babysitter or someone that's caring for the child. A change in routine. So maybe the parent is starting a new job and they're going to be working in evenings and they're no longer going to be doing the bedtime routine with their child. So how can we use a social story to talk through that piece of what that experience is going to be like? Changing how the household runs or how they spend time together. These are just, really simple ways that we can help children process these things that sometimes don't seem like a big deal, like mom's schedule is changing, but that could be really disruptive to the child. So we can use social stories to help children process that. And of course, the big things are separation from a parent or caregiver. Where that be due to a change in custody. Maybe the parent is going to a treatment program, or they're experiencing time in jail or prison. There's many different reasons why a child may be separated from their parents. And also during family time, Julie, I love that you brought up that, saying goodbye at the end of that visit is really challenging. Because it's one of the hardest things that I think parent and child have to walk through during their time of separation is, you can really look forward to that time together. It can be anxious and overwhelming. And then, having to say goodbye is really hard. And what do you do with those feelings and how do we process them? So we're actually going to dig a little bit into how we can use social stories as a tool directly for that part of helping through the transition of family time. So right now I'm going to share a social story that we created that is really surrounded around thinking about a parent going into treatment. So this is a specific example that you can use, help parents use with children if they're going into a treatment program or sometime, some shorter period of time away. And it also can be used as a tool to continue using with the child while the parent is away. So you can share this with whoever is going to be taking care of the child. In this specific example, we're talking about grandma having caring for the children while dad is away. So it would be something that could be used with the parent beforehand, and then we could continue using while the child is with their grandparent until their parent returns. So it would go like this, like Tamar had mentioned, but for the process, but this is my dad and me. I love my dad and he loves me too. Right now, I do not live with my dad. He is getting help from adults and working hard to take care of his body and mind to get better. I live with my grandma. We love each other. Sometimes I feel sad when I don't see him every day. Sometimes I feel angry. And sometimes I feel very confused. And I just want to point out here that we use the word sometimes. So we're not exactly sure how the child is going to be feeling, but these may be some of the ways that they can feel so we can name them and help them process through. I can talk to my sister and my grandma about my dad. We sometimes read this book together. Now we're giving them something they can do with their feelings. Dad will be away a little longer, but I hope we get to be together soon. When I miss my dad, I'll think about all the fun we have together until next time I see him. So that is just one example of how we can use it with children that are experiencing a separation from their parents. This can also be used if we were knowing that guardianship was going to be changing or custody was going to be changing. We could use this with children to process that. Does anybody have any questions about this specific example? Is someone talking? I can't quite hear. Okay, so now I'm going to pass it over to Maytal, and I saw a question come up in the chat about how we can create these with parents, and we're actually going to show you how we can do that. But first, Maytal is going to show you an example of a social story that she made that could be used for that transition time during family time. So as I mentioned earlier, we know that family time can be really challenging. You know, it's the supervised visit with your child. You both can have a lot of big feelings around that. And we know that saying goodbye is really hard. It's hard for the parents. They don't quite know what they're going to do with their feelings after, and it can be really hard for the child. And we often hear that at the end of the visit, sometimes the children go back to where they're staying and have some really big feelings and challenging behaviors. So this would be a way to help prepare for that transition and to really think about how we can help the child process through the next steps of going back to where they're staying and being separated from their mom or their dad. So I am going to stop my share and hand it over to Maytal.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erica and Tamar. This is a tool that I've used plenty in the past as well. So I just want, like Erica said, I wanted to show another example and another way to create this tool. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully it works. Here we go. All right. Can everyone see that? Okay. So this is just another example of a story that we can use with our participants. It says, I love my mom. She loves me too. My mom does not live with me right now. I live with Miss Jane, and sometimes that makes me sad, but I'm safe at her house. Today, I'm visiting my mom in a special playroom. We like to talk about soccer and dogs. When the visit comes to an end, it can be really hard to say goodbye to mom. Sometimes I feel mad, sometimes I feel sad, and sometimes I feel confused. When I go back to Miss Jane's house, I do not know what to do with all my feelings. Sometimes it helps to look at mom's picture or hug a bear. Sometimes it helps to stomp my feet on the ground. And like Erica and Tamar were saying, we do use the sometimes word because we can't know how someone else is feeling. So this could give them the language, and you can point out at different things that you can do or explain how you feel. Mom has my picture too. She told me she looks at it when she misses me. I think about mom a lot and remember all the fun we have together. So that is just one example of a story, and this social story can be used with children who are around preschool age, but it can also be modified for younger populations. Emotions are such an abstract concept, so sometimes it can be really challenging to understand them and talk about them. Labeling emotions can give children the language so that we are able to talk with them about them. The way that we can modify these kind of stories for younger children is even just by having a picture of mom and explaining that we love seeing her, that goodbyes can be hard, and even giving the young child a copy of the picture of mom. And this can really help them process it, and they can hold the picture, and we can do the exact same thing, but just modify it so that it is developmentally appropriate for the younger populations. So I also want to show people kind of how to create the story, but before we do that, I wanted to pause for a second and see if anyone had any thoughts, comments, or questions about using these stories or about any of the stories that you heard today. So feel free to write in the chat, unmute yourself. If you had any thoughts, I know we've already kind of discussed a lot, so we'll talk a little bit more and then I can show you how to use this tool as well.
I'm just going to jump in real quick, and I just want to acknowledge something that Heather brought up in the chat. So she said doing activities of daily living, such as like the nighttime routine, special foods that could be shared with others, such as a foster parent, so that they have a voice. I think I love this idea. These are things that keeps our children comfortable. Like, what are they used to? It's a really good way to prepare children if they're in another home, but it's also a really good tool to use as a parent. I use social stories personally for our routines at home. It helps my kids. So, you know, like first we do this and then we do this and we kind of walk through the steps. So it's just another great tool that parents can have to kind of get their day moving, or, you know, to solidify those routines that we want our children to have. So these don't just need to be used around, you know, talking through something hard that's going to be processed. Like, you can use these stories in everyday life with your kids, and help your participants learn how to use them with their children as well. And it becomes a tool. And then, like Tamara had mentioned, you know, it becomes part of your family. This is something we do when we have big feelings or we have a new routine. We can use these as a tool for processing. So it can be really useful. So Heather, I just want to really thank you for putting that out there, because that's a really good way that we can use social stories as well.
And I'm jumping in as well. So I see a question about if we should make them for our parents or should we build it with them. And I think we, like, the purpose would always do to do it with the parents, not just to give them the products, but if we want to build something custom made, and if we want to help the parents think about their child, think about what he's going to feel like, what's the emotion that will be coming, what's his mechanism of coping mechanism. We need to do it with the parents, not to give it to them as a product. And I think it's important to remember that we can share some of the stories that you can make, but always taking an opportunity to work with the parents, thinking about the specific child, the specific emotions. This also, we spoke that how this can be a tool to regulate the parents, to be prepared for this conversation. So if they're not working on it, they're just getting it as a product, it won't have the same effect. So of course, like we can help them, we can do it with them, we can guide them, but I think the purpose is always to do it. The parents will do it and we will help them to do it.
There's go ahead. Me tell
No, I was just going to say that's a good point. The caregiver and parent know their children the best, and so it's always important to include their expertise as well, and to have them create it, knowing their child and their situation.
And there was a question that came up in the chat about how would you help a child that feels abandoned? What's some good language to use to solidify their feelings? And thinking on the fly right now, I'm going to be honest and say I don't really have an answer, but I'm going to pass it over to some of my clinicians in the room that might be able to answer this. And, you know, Tamara, if you have some suggestions, Maytal, even Amy, I'm going to call on you. This is a kind of a harder one, and I want to make sure that we answer it in a meaningful way. Or we can always get back to this question.
No, I want to ask, why do you feel like abandoned when the child is alone without their parents, in a foster parent or something? Because I can think we can give this some of them might work, some of the emotions. If sometimes I can feel lonely, or sometimes I feel I miss my mommy, or I miss my old family, or sometimes I feel I'm thinking with you, not connected or not part of this new family, but also giving the other option that I know that I'm safe here and my mommy will come back to me when she can. But I think we're not need to be afraid to put some big emotions or negative ones to give them, because if, as you said, like the child have the emotion, to give him the words to describe it will be much more helpful than not to give them. This is my opinion, and I wonder if Amy or Maytal or someone else want to add some more.
I was just typing. I think you're exactly right, Tamar. Like, I think whenever we hear sort of, well, how might I help a child with this? If a parent asks us that, our first job is to kind of put on that detective hat of like, well, is it like my child is feeling abandoned at night, right? Which some kids do. Like, for them, sort of their difficulties around bedtime and sleeping really turn out to be around kind of feelings of I'm all alone. And then that's something we can work through. And then some children, really have had a parent who has, from their perspective and maybe in reality really kind of disappeared. And that's a very different kind of language and support that we would want to give. So our first step is kind of like that. I think it was page 2 in Tamar's example books, like what's the sort of sentence that we're trying to tackle here? And then that helps us think about, is this a more normative experience when I'm in bed? I can remember that my mommy's always there. I can hug my stuffed animal, or is this more of a separation that we want to talk about? And then thank you, Felice, for throwing in the chat. Got some really great book recommendations around both kinds of separations, right? Invisible String is a great one for reminding children that they're connected even when mommy's not there. And then, also When You Weren't With Me is more about foster care or other kind of separation.
Yes. Thank you both. I appreciate you jumping in on that one. And thank you, Felice, for putting that in the chat. And I believe that we are able to share the resources from the last webinar with you all too, so you can have all of those book suggestions that would really get to this topic as well. Okay, back to you, Mesa.
Sounds good. Thank you. I think you all made incredible points. So I just wanted to kind of show people how to use one of the tools. It's called Canva, and it is free to use with internet. You can download it on your phone or use it online. And I just kind of wanted to show people how I created this story and how they can make their stories as well. So I'm going to go to the home page, and you can choose the template. They have examples, and you can add any images or text that you'd like. So I'm going to choose the Instagram story template just because it's user friendly. You can see it on your phone. It's easy to download if on the fly, or like Tamar said, you can always print it and have the physical copy. So it gives you some ideas for templates if you want to use one of the options over here. And then you can also add a text box. For instance, you just click over here, you can pick the font, you can even pick one of these fancy fonts, but you just click add a text box and it adds it immediately to the page. So you can type the story's name, I love my mom, and then you can even move it around. You can make it bigger, smaller, and different color as well. And then for images, so I used stock images just for the purpose of this presentation, but you can always upload pictures of your family, of the children, through the upload button on the left. So they'll have pictures that are already here. You can upload things from your computer or use one of the images that they have. So for instance, we'll pick this one. And you can also move it around, make it larger, smaller, add pages. And then if you're really fancy, you can add animations or different elements if you want to do it online. And then if you want to print it, you can add these images as well. Has anyone ever used Canva before, is familiar with this platform? Yes. Okay, awesome. Yeah, it was my first time using it, honestly, for this presentation. And I was so pleasantly surprised at how user-friendly it was and how you're really able to include personal items and change things around pretty easily. I'm glad people love it and have used it. Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I just want to add, you can also get an app. I don't know, I might have mentioned this myself, but like you can get an app for Canva on your phone. So, it can be used on the computer, which is convenient, but you can also use it on the phone. Like Tamar and Maytal mentioned, we really recommend printing them out, but on the fly for a situation that might come up that you're not expecting, like you can always make one of these stories using the Instagram template. And so you could flip through with your child. I know, we like our kids to be in books more than screens, but sometimes children do better with the screens and might want to flip through the page and stuff. So that's just another thing that we can think of as we're using this with parents. And yes, Felice, we can post a link to Canva for you. And after this webinar, we're also going to be sending, Philip's on it. There you go. Thank you, Philip. We're going to send out the actual samples that we use so that you guys can use them yourselves and change them as you need to. So does anybody have any thoughts or feelings, comments they want to share about using social stories with children? Or we could, if you have an example of a situation that would have been helpful, you know, how the feeling it brought up, how the child overcame it, like something that you could think of using with other parents. And yes, then thanks, Jen. It's a great tool for the toolbox. I really think that using social stories is a powerful tool for us to have.
So I definitely think it would be beneficial, especially for the young ones, just, you know, indulging their senses with visuals and, you know, just as for the parents being a part of it, I think that's like a super awesome way to, you know, maybe start opening some doors that have been shut when it comes to expressing emotion. But as for me, it's like definitely something I'm into. I've always wanted to do like a kid's story, and you know, this might get the ideas rolling for me with that, but I think it's a great tool.
That's great. Yeah, Jesse, it's a good place to use your art skills, right? And you know, we talked about using this with, you know, slightly preschool age or older children, but this can be used with younger children too. We can use that with, you know, little babies. Maybe it's just pictures, and we can invite the parent to tell the story themselves, to talk to their baby about what they see in the pictures. You know, the words aren't so much as important as, you know, what we're saying to the child and showing them the pictures as they walk through. Maytal had shared that, you know, she worked in the infant classroom and used these when infants were moving from the infant classroom to the next class up, where they would have pictures of the child with their current teachers, and then pictures of the child in the classroom and how they would move forward. So they don't necessarily have to be, you know, older. We can use these with children too, just like we encourage parents to use books. You know, we're using social stories in the same way. Now, it doesn't always have to be reading the exact words. We can make things up as we go along and use the pictures as our visual guide. So there's a question in the chat for you, Tamar. It's you mentioned earlier that parents can use the actual child's photos when and when is it not, when can you use them and when is it not appropriate? What are the benefits of using their photos versus another child's photo or clip art?
Yeah, so I think in general, we really need to think every case and every child, what will be beneficial for them, to think about it. I think in many cases, kids really love to see their own photos. If I want to think about situations that it won't be appropriate, maybe of those situations that we thought we want to make more distance between the book and the child, if we want, so maybe to see their own faces will be even harder. And I don't know, maybe we want to, so we'll use an animal or a different child or a general one. Or we can use, or I don't know, maybe in a situation that parents doesn't have very updated, like parents that are separated from their kids and they don't have very updated pictures. So maybe this will be the reason. But I think if we don't feel that we need the distance, and I think for kids, it's really helpful, even, I don't know, we said going to the dentist for the first time, to take a picture of the building of the dentist, how it really look like. This is part of the preparation, if it's possible. Or if they're going to a new school, don't take just a general picture. I mean, you can, but if you can take a picture of the real school, how it's going to look like. Or before visiting my mom, to take a picture of the real room and what we're playing in, like the toys that we have in the real room. I think it will be even better. If I'm thinking about situation that it's not well, then if it's really complicated, or if we feel that the children is something really, really challenging, that the child needs a little bit more distance from it, so maybe it won't be a good part. But I think for many reasons, most of our examples, kids really like to see themselves in a book.
Definitely. When I used it in the classroom, like Erica said, with infants, we had a couple of parents who did not feel comfortable having their children's face in a book that went to other parents. So it's also important to keep the family's wishes as well. And that would be an example where using the picture might not work for that situation. But we did have the book in the classroom, and for one of our classrooms, all the families gave permission to use it. And so we had the children's pictures and we were able to show them about their transition. We wrote one for the COVID shutdown as well. And we took a picture of our classroom and we said it was closed. But yeah, it's always nice to use real examples because it's a little bit easier to picture it when you can see a picture of what is happening. Heather, do you have a hand raised?
Yeah, go ahead, Heather. And then there's a comment in the chat.
Okay. So I have 3 special need kiddos that were adopted. So I've used a lot of these over the time. And one of the most fun ways that I think I've adapted it is I made choice books, which is the same storybooks. So they would get to page 2, it would be like, do you go down the path of brushing your teeth, or do you go to the path of like washing your face? And each night they got to pick what they would do, and they make it like a game, but incorporating. So they're all the, and then the next page is like, do you brush your teeth? You're getting all the skills, but you're just like letting them have that power of choice. And I think that's when a child has, my children all experience foster cares, multiple foster homes. I think when they come back and forth to whoever they're going to land with, they just didn't have that power of choice or that power of stability of themselves. So it was very helpful for them to get that back. And we used it through that kind of social pragmatic kind of storytelling. So I thought that's just a different idea. It doesn't have to always just be like a concrete book. It can be interactive and teach play too.
I love that idea, Heather. Giving children choice also gives them control, where sometimes they don't always feel control. And even though it's either brushing teeth or washing face first, which are 2 skills that they're working on, they still have the choice of what they want to do first, which also helps build trust. That's an awesome idea. Thank you, Heather. And then I saw someone wrote in the chat, I know it's old school, but how about writing letters, even if drawing diagrams is a way of communicating? That's the beautiful thing about social stories. They're so individualized. And so it's nice to really work with the child or the participant and family and know what the best choice for them is. If writing a letter is the way that communication works best for them, then that's a wonderful idea. If drawing a picture, just looking at a picture. And that's why I love it so much, because it really is personalized to that person, because everyone is so different. So I think that writing a letter could also work.
Definitely. I just want to add on that, Rebecca. I have a child that we use social stories with. He's a little older now, but he loves to draw and he really likes comics. So we used to do social stories in more of like a comic book form, and he would draw the pictures themselves. And he wouldn't use himself necessarily as a character, but he had a superhero version of himself called Super T that we would write the stories about, and we would walk through different situations. So it was a really fun way for him to get to describe like how he was feeling and what was going to happen next without me having to give him those ideas or tools. So it was really cute and fun. It was even something that he brought into school and the teachers laminated for him. So you can do that. You can laminate these books for your kids so that they can have them longer. They can design them themselves if they're old enough to, and that's an also great way to get them to build skills. It's a great way for you to bond. It's a great activity for you to have with your child. And it's really good. And yes, Felice, like the suggestion of writing letters to your children in between visits, like that's a great tool to help parents process their feelings. Even if they're not letters that they're able to deliver to their child, we can think about writing them. And for older kids that are experiencing that separation, we can encourage them to do that too. Write down how you're feeling to mom or dad right now. It's a good way to process. And I just wanted to bring up one thing that I heard Tamar say about like talking about taking pictures of the actual dentist. Now, this is a great way we can kind of shift and think about how can we use this with parents. When I think about, like warm handoffs, or how scary it can kind of be for a parent or a person to, go to a new therapist for the first time. Like, what does the reception area look like? Who is the person at the front desk? Who are you going to talk to? What bus are you going to take to get there? Like just kind of all of those steps that are going to get us to that place. Sometimes they're really scary. Sometimes they're anxiety provoking. Going to places as an adult for the first time can be nerve-wracking too. So these are ways that we can help parents kind of process some of these things too and get through those barriers as well. This is the bus that you get on. You're going to get off at this stop. I might be really nervous that I'm going to miss my stop at this point, but I know that I'm looking for this landmark and I can pull the string. I don't know, just like kind of those things, and like talking about showing actual pictures of what the spaces might look like are a great way to get parents to process through these things too. We might not necessarily be like, here's a social story to help you through, but we can think of like, these are the ways that we can help you process new situations. And I think Sophia added here, for younger kids, postcard size book with family pictures for kids to hold on to during times apart. That's a really good idea. Thank you, Sophia. All right. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Hey, you guys, this has been really great. I've loved all the things that you've brought up and the questions you've asked and suggestions you've given. I want to just thank you, Tamar, very much for walking us through this and showing us the value of social stories and how to create them, and Maytal for walking us through Canva. This has been a really great experience, and I think it's a wonderful tool for us to use with parents and children. And I hope that you all got out some great information today, and we will send the slides and all of the templates and everything after this out in an email for you. So thank you so much for your time this morning. I hope you get to enjoy the snow day and stay warm. And also there's a short survey about the webinar in the chat. If you guys could take a minute to fill that out, would be really helpful.